and welcome to episode 75 of the Unseen Podcast. I'm your host, I'm Adam Smith, and I'm joined once again by some of my unseen friends. We have, from astronomy's finest, Matthias. Hello.
Hello, guys. It's very nice to join you today.
We have space engineer Paul Carr.
Hello, everyone.
And we have space artist, messenger of extraterrestrial intelligence, Daniela De Pauli. Hi.
Hi, everyone. Hi.
And we have a very special guest. Normally, I give our guests a short introduction, but today, I think all I really need to say is, Fraser Cain, welcome to the Unseen Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are most welcome, Fraser. It's great to have you with us. I can't really imagine how any of our regular listeners can not know who you are. But for those people that have randomly selected this podcast, who are you and what do you do?
Hey, that sounds familiar. I am the publisher of Universe Today, which is a space and astronomy news website. I've been publishing that since 1999, and we have tens of thousands of stories about space and astronomy on the website and a big team of reporters. I am also the co-host of a podcast called Astronomy Cast with Dr. Pamela Gay. And we've been doing that for about 10 years. Actually, we just wrapped up our 10th season. And in addition, I do a series on YouTube called The Guide to Space. And then a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm one of the directors of CosmoQuest, which is a citizen science community, and a bunch of other stuff. So mostly just space stuff all the time, everywhere.
Yes, that sounds about right. You mentioned that you've been doing this a very long time. That's, 18 years?
Mm-hmm.
Since you first formed Universe Today. Has a lot changed?
In relation to what? Or which part? Do you mean like the sort of the stuff that's happening in the space field, or what it means to run a space news website?
To run the space news website, I imagine that when you began Universe Today all those years ago, most of the other websites that were doing that kind of thing, if there were any, are no longer here. You've survived.
No, that's not true. In fact, space.com started up a little before me, and they're still around and doing great. So now I think
they're
they had
still on as good though, Fraser.
They're a good they're a fearsome competitor, and they're definitely a lot bigger than me. So I think they're doing fine. I think the biggest thing that's changed was when I started out, there were no, except for space.com, and there was a few others, Spaceflight Now and Space Ref. So no, I think a lot of the NASA Watch, a lot of the dedicated sites were back around then and are still going. What disappeared was that a lot of the big news agencies, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, had fairly significant reporting people. You had Miles O'Brien at CNN, who was off chasing rocket launches, and that all kind of disappeared. But now there's sort of a second wave of reporting out there these days, and there's a ton of reporting. Like, I would say this is my great challenge these days. It's just there's so many great competitors producing really interesting content out there that it's really hard to kind of stay above and try to stay in people's minds about what you're doing. So no, it still is kind of it was active and busy back then, and it's been it's quite active and busy now. So just different players.
Did you realize back then that there would be this golden age of astronomy?
Oh, I know. When I started Universe Today, for me, it was just I was doing client service work. I was building websites and consulting for people, and I just wanted to try some of my own ideas because nobody would listen to me. And so I started up Universe Today just as a side project. And within because I just picked up some of my hobbies. Like I was into video games, I was into science fiction, I was into mountain bike riding, I was into astronomy, and so I was sort of like, I'm going to pick one of my hobbies and run a website that's based on that. And so I picked astronomy. And within a few months, I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Like I just knew that it just was everything I wanted for my life. And so that, that's sort of how I moved into it. And it's been quite a ride ever since.
How did you get involved with CosmoQuest and Dr. Pamela Gay?
Well, for this is sort of the origin story of Astronomy Cast, but Phil Plait and I have been friends and collaborators for a long time. He's the Bad Astronomer, and this whole podcast thing came along about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and I reached out to Phil Plait and I was like, hey, we should do a podcast together. Here's my plan. You're the expert, I'm the knowledgeable amateur. Let's have a conversation about these topics. We'll pick one topic each week and you'll just teach me. And he's like, dude, that sounds fun, but I'm so busy, I don't have time, but I know somebody who is free right now who just wrapped up her podcast, and that was Dr. Gay. And so I reached out to her, and I'd listened to their podcast, and I reached out to her and said, hey, can we, here's the idea. Do you want to do this podcast? And she was like, yeah, it sounds great to me. And so within a week, we recorded the first episode, and it was just it was exactly as I had sort of imagined in my mind, just a conversation between two people who sounded like they were good friends. We became friends, but we didn't really know each other when we started the show. And that sort of just progressed. And as we worked on, Pamela has dedicated herself really to citizen science and astronomy knowledge out there as both a professor and as, in her other projects. And so I, must have been about 5-6 years ago. She still has like the napkin where we kind of mapped out what we wanted, like what the feedback we kept getting with Astronomy Cast was how the fans, the amateur fans out there, were very knowledgeable about this material and wanted to contribute, but just didn't have the degree that would help them be recognized. And at the same time, Pamela had been doing this work with Galaxy Zoo and realized that, that citizens, if you create some kind of web portal interface, then regular folks can come and do science. And so that we can bridge the gap, build a big community of people who are knowledgeable and enthusiastic, and then at the same time, have researchers that need that kind of work, and then bridge the gap, bridge those two together. And then for us, it's a matter of like teaching people, skilling them up in various areas, in very specialized areas that then make their work more applicable to what the researchers are looking for, but without people needing to have to go back and get that PhD. They don't need that piece of paper anymore to contribute spectroscopic data or gravitational microlensing or variable star astronomy, or there are concepts that you can teach a person in a very specialized area and let them contribute to science. So this is an old concept, bird watching contributing to bird counts and things like that. So that's how we got involved with CosmoQuest. And then in the last, it was sort of on a shoestring for a while, and then in the last couple of years, Pam was able to get a fairly sizable NASA grant and kind of kick things up to the next level and be able to actually provide funding to the researchers to take advantage of this platform and this community to get their work done. So that's sort of how that all came together.
Yeah, cool. Pamela has been on the Unseen podcast as a guest a couple of years ago, and it was back in what I could call the wilderness years, before she got the big NASA grant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that. She was talking about how tough it was going to be if she didn't get that big grant. And then a few months later, she got it. So,
she nailed it. Yeah.
Yay, Pamela.
Yeah, absolutely. Pamela is, one of the best fundraisers that I know of, and so I mean, we'd organized these hangout-a-thons, and she was sort of running all of these things to keep the machine going and keep the lights on until we could get a larger set of funding. So absolutely, she's a champ. She's
I met Pamela through Astronomers Without Borders. So we've done several programs together. She was collaborating with us back in 2012, 2013. So it's a kind of international community, I guess, of people who do kind of astronomy outreach from different perspectives. And it's great to be able to collaborate with each other. And
it's a really great community, like I think one of the things that I just keep seeing over and over and over again is just how lovely all of the people, most of the people in this community, both in terms of the science journalists and the astronomers and people, the researchers and so on, like, we all seem to get along really well, and everybody is, it's not really seen as a competition. It's about helping each other out. And I'm best friends with some of my, my biggest competitors. And that's just, how this field works. And I'm really grateful that we have such a positive group of people to interact with and work with it. I hope it sets a tone that new people who want to get into this field and want to be it an astronomer or a journalist, and know that there's a great group of people that can't wait to help them, sort of get their message out to the world. And I really hope that people kind of know that that's out there and don't feel afraid to reach out to all of us and participate in this community. Here we are on the podcast right now, and you can, it's the same theme all the time. So it's a great group.
Yeah, you've always seemed open to collaboration. The weekly Space Hangout is a fine example. You're happy to invite people that might be perceived as your competitors. You're always happy to have them on board and, come together, which is great.
Yeah, I don't have any competitors. Right. It doesn't even occur to me that I have competitors. I mean, for sure, I see when people get stories before we do, and then I will, if space.com or anyone out there gets a story and I'm like, oh, we just got scooped, but I'll link to their story in my Twitter and send them some traffic. It's no problem.
So how difficult is it to get the scoop and keep the science?
Well, so so one thing that we did a couple of years ago was we stopped adhering to embargoes. So one of the things that goes on with the sort of the whole scientific community and the tech community is they do this thing called embargoes, where they will send out a press release, but it's embargoed. And so you have to you can't report on it until you can start your work, but you can't actually go live with it until some certain date. And the problem was that the people who were sending out those news releases were using it to kind of define, there was the us and the them, who got access to the embargoed material and who didn't. And there was some really, what I thought were very prominent, some of the best journalists of the time who were being sort of outside of that wall. So we don't break the embargo, but we just don't look at any of it, right? And what that did was that made us get good and fast. So because, all of our competitors are going to have a week's notice on us, and for us, until the story has broken live, we don't look at it, that we can then turn around and get the reporting out. That said, you have to be accurate and you have to be true to the science. And then you also have to be, try and get the clicks and get the people to come and visit and take a look at what you're doing. So you have to kind of walk that line between being super honest about it, but also being a little, you're trying to be a little clickbaity about it, and that is the difficulty. But it's an experience thing. It's a practice thing. You if you're sloppy with your reporting, or if you're sloppy with sort of really defining the true state of the scientific consensus, you get smacked down by the readers, and they tell you in the comments, and they tell you and you get angry tweets, and you get nasty emails, and you sort of internalize this and use this to make you more and more careful. And over time, we just get better and better and better at being able to sort of walk that line, figure out what's the important thing, report it, but at the same time not get but not do it wrong. And that's the art.
Fraser, how many people are contributing to Universe Today at the moment?
It depends. Sort of, I would say we've got few full timers and anywhere from like 6 to 8 freelancers who contribute any number of stories over the course of the month.
Are you trying to keep the team at the same size, or are you always looking for someone fresh?
We're always looking for new writers. It's sort of, it's in terms of budget, like we got to figure out how much material we can afford to pay for every month. And so that's a part of it. And then also just trying to test out people slowly and carefully, because, it is for new people, you have to sort of figure out how much they do know and if they have learned those hard lessons yet.
Are services like Patreon, are they helping with the cost of the?
Patreon's a total game changer and probably the most exciting funding source for what we do. But right now, Patreon, I think we're at $2,700 for Patreon. So that doesn't cover a fraction of the expenses for the team. But it's a very exciting potential for what the future is. So is my audio breaking up for the rest of you, or just you, Paul?
It's breaking up.
It's okay.
Yes,
It's okay.
Okay. I'm not sure what would be causing that. Maybe I have a bad internet. So tell me if it's happening again. I'd have to like restart my router. So it's to be able to create content directly for the fans is the most exciting idea I can imagine. And so I really want to get to that world. And right now, having to create content for the advertisers really is what we do. And that's an understandable bargain that we have to make. But we are, you can see this future where the fans pay for the writers to write articles that are for the fans, and there's no advertisers involved.
Right now, Fraser, I have something that irks me a little bit, and maybe I'm sure you've dealt with this. Press releases are not science, and quite often the scientist behind the press release has only had minimal input into the press release. How do you get pushed past the press release?
No, you're absolutely right. There was one that we just talked about this in the Weekly Space Hangout, and Paul Matt Sutter was kind of grumpy about how a press release had gone out that the Milky Way is located in the boondocks of the universe, that we're in a void and not in the sort of regular density of the universe. And the reality is that we're in this slightly less dense part of the universe and not like an actual void. So that's a tough one, because you're exactly right. The people from the press department are taking the research, and then they're trying to spin it in a way that's going to get our attention. That's going to be, candy to us. And they, and sometimes they trick us, and sometimes we catch them. We try to reach out to the actual researchers for almost every story that we do. So you'll get a quote from the researcher, and often then as you're talking to them, you'll be like, how do you feel about this? Is this what's happening? And the researcher is a lot more honest and direct and straightforward about what the research really means. And in many cases, if you can, then by all means, we try to catch it and and then figure out a better hook that is more consistent with the science. But it's a tough one. You're constantly, the more time you spend in this, you realize how there is this pulse of the news, that the publicity goes out and then everybody reports on it all at the same time. But the raw scientific research was there months in advance that just nobody noticed and nobody picked it up. It took that publicity to get it out into the attention of all the journalists. So yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, most of the scientists aren't very good at representing their research, and most of the PR departments at universities and other institutions are too good at playing up the this perhaps the small significance of what their scientists have come up with.
Yeah.
And other times their scientists come up with something fantastic, like at NASA. It's good, but they come out and say, okay, in a week we're going to tell you something really, really important, but we're not going to tell you what it is.
Yeah.
And everybody says, oh my God, it's aliens. It's aliens.
Yeah.
That's what we hope for.
Yeah. Nope. Turns out we're just changing the name of our spacecraft.
Or, yeah, or it could be, a pretty important finding, but not, nothing that's going to shatter
Not
anybody's
so radical.
worldview.
Well, but NASA has always done that. NASA has always announced press events in the future. They've done this the entire time that I've been involved in it. But, it's only recently that so many people are paying attention and just sort of repeating what's going on. So I think it's that process of saying we're going to make an announcement because we want to explain the science, and people like freak out and think that it's bigger than it is. But that's their problem. That's not NASA's problem. I think NASA should be a little more, or all of these people should be a little clearer, like to set people's expectations.
Do you know,
right?
have you seen Zach Wiener's best cartoon where he says, aliens, not aliens?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, well, he says that's what all NASA announcements should be, aliens or not.
Yeah.
But before we start talking about the aliens, I have a question about the reception of science news from the large public. So, what is your objective when you do science communication? It's is it about maybe changing the perception of people towards certain things, or what is it really the thing that makes you somehow kind of believe in this job that you do?
For me, it's very simple, is that I am following the things that I find interesting. And I explain to people the things that I find interesting and why I find them interesting. And that is literally the beginning and the end of what I do. So I have no ulterior motive. I have no interest in I don't know, in like building up their enthusiasm for science or space or helping them be a better skeptic or any of that stuff. I'm literally like, here's a thing that's cool. I want you to understand it's cool. If I've done my job right, you agree with me that this thing is cool, and that's it.
But surely all this science communication, which keeps growing and growing by the month, every few weeks you see a new YouTube channel, and it's great to see also people somehow starting their own channels. And so we are living somehow in the golden age of science, and especially astronomy. I don't remember ever such a time during which every day we read astronomy news, which I think is fantastic because it really keeps somehow pushing our idea of where we are in the cosmos, and it kind of challenges a little bit our perception of who we are and our life on this planet, which I think it's what we often refer to as the overview effect. And I think it's great to, at least for my perspective, it's great to see the public growing and and becoming more interested in that. So in a way, even if you perhaps your direct intention is not that of having a particular social impact, eventually your work together with the work of so many other science communicators will contribute to challenge culture as well. So
yeah, I mean, I think that interest was always there. It was just that the distribution platforms, the gateways, didn't recognize and service that interest properly. And they were servicing sitcoms and hour-long cop dramas. That was what they wanted to create. And because they controlled the distribution platform, other people didn't really have any kind of way to access around that. But turns out what people want to do is they want to watch people play video games. They want to listen to interesting science explainers and see cool little animated things about space and astronomy with birds and, the like some of the really cool animation science videos that are out there. So I think that demand, that hunger for knowledge was already there. It was just, unserved, improperly served by the media that was out there. And here we are properly serving it. And right now, there's tons of room to grow.
I would like to ask you about your award-winning guide to space. It continues to grow. You seem to be getting better at it, better and better. Your latest video on the Parker Solar Probe, you've gone on to 4K.
Mm-hmm.
It looks beautiful.
Thank you. I can't see it. I don't have a 4K screen in the house. So
have you got your clips ready for the next Parsec Award meeting?
I do. Yeah, I sent you my Parsec Award. I'm ready to win my 4th Parsec Award. I apologize if I do.
I think some of the people you've collaborated with, like Sarah Pearson, she's been doing some very slick videos recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good.
I think she might give you a run for your money. We'll see.
I'm ready. But no, she's terrific. You can just tell, like I saw her videos. I'm like, okay, I'm going to reach out, do a collaboration because she's clearly knows her material, has got a fairly pro setup and is very enthusiastic about this. And I think the more people that you can kind of support and get them moving, then I'm glad to do it.
Definitely. And while we're
Fraser.
Go on, Matt.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Fraser, how hard is it to find new subjects for Guide to Space or Astronomy Cast? Because you recorded so many episodes. I think it's 450 episodes of Astronomy Cast, and I think a few hundreds of Guide to Space. Is it hard and harder?
No, I have a list of topics ready to go in my sort of list of scripts right now that's probably the same size as what I've already published. And what tends to happen is I'll think of an idea or someone will make a question or someone will have a comment or whatever, and I'll throw that in. And then the other thing that I've been committing myself to do more of is actually just updating on the news. So if there's a big event in space and astronomy, I will do a video on it, like finding chemicals for life at Enceladus or SpaceX sticking the landing or things like that. And so that's sort of stretching out the number of topics that I have to do. But no, I will never run out of topics. No way.
How long does it take to record one episode of Guide to Space?
Takes me about 2 hours to write. And they're about 1,500 words now. And then we shoot a bunch in a batch, and I guess we take about 2 hours to shoot 3 videos. So from the writing is 2 hours. The shooting is about half an hour, 45 minutes. And then Chad's editing time is the big one, is probably about another 8 to 10 hours on top of that.
And you count bloopers and mistakes in those 2 hours?
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, do you mean like when we're recording? I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, we make all kinds of bloopers and mistakes.
I was looking at some of the really old episodes of the Weekly Space Hangout earlier this week.
Oh,
And there are some people on there that have gone on to do really awesome things. Emily Lakdawala,
sure.
Amy Shearer Title.
Mm-hmm.
Amy's awesome. And she has got her YouTube play button just like yours. You've got is it a silver one?
Yeah, I just got my silver play button.
What do you need to do to get a silver play button?
100,000 100,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Cool.
So
Congratulations.
there it is.
We have astronaut teacher Mike Mongo has joined us. Hi, Mike.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Mongo. You guys, my people. How's everyone? I'm sorry for turning up late. I have a valid excuse though. I have a television series being produced.
Oh,
And,
wow.
Yeah. So that
At 8 o'clock on Friday night.
I mean, actually, I feel really good about saying that because I like Fraser Cain Rockstar is here. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was just dealing with my producers and the television series that I'm working on. Cha cha cha.
Okay, but yeah,
So,
you're just like a pop starlet, and he's a rock star. So
Exactly. That is exactly right. I actually have a question for Fraser.
Ready.
First of all, hi, Mike Mongo. Good to see you.
Hey, Mike, good to see you.
Yes. And how do you do those takes that you do on your camera? They're so flawless. And I've watched the outtake videos, but I mean, you're so just like, you're eloquent. It just flows. How does that come to you?
Which part? So, I'm not sure if you know, but there's sort of 2 parts to it. There is the Guide to Space episodes, and those are scripted, and I'm reading from a teleprompter. And then there's the question shows, and those are coming off the top of my head.
Okay, so it's the former, not the latter. And by the way, I am a Patreon supporter of Fraser Cain.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Like the outreach you do is it worked. It got me. You drew me in, and we need more of that, particularly in this era that we all found ourselves in. I think all of it makes a big difference.
Well, I mean, I recommend to anybody who has like cut their cable and they've now got Netflix and HBO and stuff. Like, take the amount that you were spending on your cable bill and portion that out to the stuff that you love. And so I contribute to a bunch of YouTubers that I really like that I'll watch every episode, other podcasters, photographers, things like that. And so it ends up being, if you were spending $150 a month before, set aside like $50 to fund directly to the people that you love. And it makes a world of difference to them. If you're consuming their content and they're bringing you value in your life, then make their lives better.
Emily Lakdawala.
Mm-hmm, of course.
I mentioned that.
she's got a book coming out soon.
Yeah, so she started a YouTube channel about time, and we're all happy about it. Yeah.
Oh, good. All right.
Yes.
Good. Well, now we can do a collaboration.
That would be great. And she's got a Patreon.
Very cool. Okay. I'll talk to her. Well, also Ian O'Neill did as well. So Ian O'Neill.
And Ian O'Neill, another good friend of mine.
Yeah. So and we're going to do some collaborations. I'm going to try and give him the Fraser Cain bump. So so hopefully I can give him some more traffic. Because
Ian O'Neill. Ian O'Neill's a giant fan of bunny rabbits. Did you know that?
I did know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
By the way, Ben Tippett, our very first guest on this podcast, is a big rabbit guy. So just thought I'd add that in.
There may be a connection there of science and rabbits. Who knows? I myself am a Bugs Bunny fan.
I have a rabbit too, but I'm not going to go and get it.
What do you think is the best format to reach the most people? Is it a video or just a text on the website or podcasts? What do you think is the best way?
Video by far. Yeah. I mean, you look at some of the science video channels on YouTube, and their followings are unbelievable. Like the folks at SciShow, Vsauce, Veritasium, they're rock stars. I mean, they have 4 million followers. I mean, they get as many people watching their stuff as primetime television shows. It's amazing. So absolutely.
I mean, how do we have science so popular right now, and we're facing all these things we are politically, like this anti-intellectual, anti-expert, anti-science mentality?
I don't know what you're talking about. Our prime minister has put a lot of really good, sort of scientifically minded people into positions of power.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Did you know our minister of transportation is an astronaut?
Oh man.
Yeah. So so things are doing great.
A hush falls over the crowd.
What a trade.
Oh, gosh, yeah. No, don't trade. Don't do it. It's a bad trade. There's better Pokemon cards. Oh gosh. Yeah, good point. Well taken. Yeah. So I was specifically talking about here in the United States, which is a netherworld at the moment, and and I'm actually in Key West. So United States is the nation between you and I.
Right.
Yeah. So.
The Conch Republic, in other words. Yeah.
The Conch Republic.
Yes.
90 miles from Cuba. Do you get to go to schools very often, Fraser, and speak with students?
Well, I've been to my kids' schools and have done some. So every time they are going through space or astronomy, I will do a class. I'll do a talk. Their teachers want me to come in and do a talk for them. So, but I haven't done anything beyond that. Yeah, I've done some question shows for some schools. So, if a school will gather together all of their space questions, and then I'll do answers for them.
Do you have the time to do stuff like that? Do you have the time to? Would you have the time to?
I don't know yeah, sometimes. I mean, I'm definitely busy, but I seem to have time to play video games too. So I don't know.
Okay, well there you go. Then you got time. Awesome.
Yeah.
Great to hear.
Yeah, and watch Game of Thrones and things like that. So no, I've like a little time.
So I Skype into classrooms all over the place if I can't travel. Like a lot of times I'll do a book tour, and when I do a book tour, I'll organize days at local schools at the same time. I mean, my book is geared towards kids, the astronaut instruction manual. It's 8 to 12-year-olds. But I work a lot of times with kindergarten students or first graders or second graders. I'll do the whole spectrum and just earmark the message for the maturity level. And I think that the way that you communicate is so, you get really very complex concepts, and you are able to communicate them in a way that other people can get a hold of them and then share them yet again. And that's the kind of stuff that goes over great in classrooms. You're probably one of those. Thank you. You're probably one of those teachers or educators rather that would be able to communicate with the most difficult group of all, high school students.
I have done that. So my daughter's grade 10 class. Yeah, I came in and did a session on what was happening in space and astronomy. And
how did it go?
Fine. They had a good time. Yeah, I had a bunch of good questions. So who knows?
I mean, when I'm communicating with...
What do you think is the future of science communication? Will it stay like this for a few years, or do you see it evolving continuously?
Yeah, I mean, I think it feels like the internet is really starting to mature now. So the web is the web is the web. The concept of blogging and writing news articles and stuff is fairly same. The new social media is popping up, but it's some combination of audio, video, or text. So I feel like now just we're going to be entering a fairly mature state of what all this is, and now it's just a matter of it taking over everything, right? What the internet is going, will continue to take over everything in all places. So I think it's just going to continue to mature. I can't imagine. I mean, if we invent virtual reality, like actual virtual reality that works, or augmented reality, or some kind of neural interface, then maybe it'll be a new medium will appear. But until then, I mean, what else we got? Text, audio, video, in person.
Yeah, my other podcast recently had its very best day of downloads, and all the information I put out on that podcast was available in text form, or available to anybody who really cared about it. You could just email me and ask me what's going on. But all I did was I had Tabby Boyajian on for like 20 minutes talking about what's going on with the star that's named after her. And I had, for me, it was a lot of download. For you, it would be a bad day. But, it's just, people are kind of hooked into them. And this is all audio. This was not video or anything. People are kind of hooked into this new media thing in a way that I'm kind of surprised about. I mean, I could have blogged about it just as well and would have gotten, a nice number of views. But I think we have a generation now that just sits in our RSS feed and waits for the data, the audio to roll or the video to roll in, and there it is. And and also they like seeing and hearing real people.
Yeah. I mean, that's my preferred method of media is podcasts. I mean, by far, I listen to more podcasts. I consume more podcasts than any other form of media by a factor of 10.
Yeah, well, me too. I mean, I have to drive a lot. So I'm in my car. My Bluetooth hooks up and I've got a podcast. And I have a lot of really good podcasts. Some are space and science and some are not. Some are comedy, some are music, whatever. But I listen to probably over a course of a week 20 different podcasts.
Yeah, I used to listen to Astronomy Cast for every day at work for like a year. So basically, I listened to like 300 episodes while I was working, and I was working for a furniture manufacturer. So basically, I was doing some manual things, and I was listening to Astronomy Cast. So basically, 300 episodes in I think a year.
That's hardcore.
That's really hardcore. Yes. That's more episodes of Astronomy Cast than I've ever listened to.
I found Fraser via Astronomy Cast. I think I typed astronomy into Google search, and one of the hits I had was Astronomy Cast, and that is how I found Universe Today, Astronomy Cast, the Weekly Space Hangout, and everything else that Fraser does.
Awesome.
So when you start, what do you attribute to, like you're definitely one of the cornerstones of science outreach out there right now. I mean, if there's another tier higher than you, then I mean, you're certainly at that still very important tier.
There's a whole other tier above me.
There is
sure.
acknowledged, but still, what do you attribute that success to? How, it's you're eloquent, certainly. You're well informed. There is a warmness to how you communicate about science, and like I said earlier, that you're able to break down very complex ideas in a way that we can intake and then share with others. So, is there something that you think that made a difference in your success?
Well, okay. So I think that we all have things that we're good at, and for me, I have different things that I'm good at than, for example, what Pamela's good at. I mean, Pamela's got this voice that, people just love to listen to, right. And so, and has this just way of explaining things. So, Neil deGrasse Tyson has got this baritone voice and is so smart. And so there are, I think, what do I have going? Maybe my work ethic. I'm willing to work hard, and I'm willing to do things that are that don't seem like a lot of fun for long periods of time. And if that's writing, I have to write a lot. I mean, I think I write the equivalent of a novel every 4 months or so. Like I'm writing the equivalent of 4 or 5 books a year as I write, and it's hard work, right? To sit down in front of the computer and write. So, but at the same time, I have I'm so excited about being able to get these messages out, get these videos out, and so that sort of drags you along. So I would say that's the part that I do. My mentor in writing a long time ago, he said the best thing to do is to learn how to write quickly, because the best writers are the ones who have had the most practice, and the people who've had the most practice are the people who write the quickest. And so, you learn to write quickly first, and then you learn to write well over time as you get a lot of words out. I'm sure I have a more eloquent way to describe this, and so I learned very early on, he kind of set the pace for what a professional writer should be able to be capable of. And that's, where I kind of set that as my standard as I put material out. And so I'd say that's it. That's and then all the rest of it is practice. It's funny. I've done, I don't know, 1,000 live broadcasts through various channels. As Mateus was saying, close to 500 episodes of Astronomy Cast where we're doing this live, these question shows now. Like, it's just practice, just again and again and again and again doing stuff. And after a while, the things that I am knowledgeable about, the things that I can talk about, is a widening sphere of ideas. So that's it. Practice and hard work.
Well, like the takeaway right there about the writing quickly, that's a terrific piece of insight. And when you write, do you schedule your writing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have a block of writing. I have a schedule in my schedule every day. I have 4 hours that I set aside from 10 o'clock in the morning until 2 p.m. And the kids are at school. I've had a chance to have a nice breakfast with the wife. I'm done with the gym, and I can sort of make sure that my email's under control, and then I will hit the computer. I will start writing at 10 o'clock, and I will go as hard as I can until about 2 o'clock. So it gives me about 4 hours it's amazing what you can get done in that amount of time.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah, and I do that 5 days a week.
Another thing I heard, though, what you said was that you have the passion you have for the subject matter, and that it sort of drags you along. I mean, that there's a real truth to that I explain that to students all the time, that there was a teenager that said to me at the International Space Development Conference one time, he said, I hear that if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I said, that is actually the exact opposite of the truth. If you do what you love, you will work harder at it than anything you ever do in your life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's really good advice. I mean, I think that there's sort of this advice out there to like follow your passion, and I think that's okay, but it's more about become passionate about what you do. And that by becoming passionate about what you do, you get better, and you gain skills, and you become more and more useful to society. And I think that's the much better path to go. So if you're like, well, I could be talking about other things, but astronomy happened to be the thing that I picked and dedicated my life to. But the part that I enjoy is that communication and the teaching and following my curiosity. So I think that's a great point.
When you started, how did you feel? Like obviously, like it sounds to me like you've just gained immense confidence over time, as we do. And then how was it when you started?
Well, I mean, the great thing about the internet, the Wayback Machine, you can go back and look at the first stuff that I ever did, and it was very tentative. I mean, I was essentially trying to learn space science, right? But my background was in computers and engineering, so I didn't really, I'd taken university physics and things like that, so I had a lot of the sort of underlying concepts. But if you look at the original stuff, I was just trying to summarize. I was just trying to take what was the story, trying to wrap my head around it and try to summarize it in a paragraph. And it wasn't for probably 3 or 4 years that I until I finally actually wrote a story that was all my own, that was longer than 50 words. It took me, definitely took me a long time to build up that confidence and momentum. And then probably another 4 or 5 years until it was effortless, right?
Beautiful.
So probably half of my career was spent in a certain amount of torment, of self-torment. And, and even now, I mean, the key is that I'm, Adam was saying at the beginning that, that the production quality and what we do is getting better and better and better. And that is I know what sucks about what we do. I'm deeply aware of the problems, but I also am aware that we can only sort of crack these problems one at a time. And so there is this haunting issue that is constantly in the back of my mind, and we just go, okay, now we're going to crack it. Now we've cracked all this other stuff, and now it's your turn, lighting, and next, or music. Like right now, music is the thing that we're trying to crack, and then the next thing is like get graphics and we haven't even brought in like interviews and doing stuff on the road and moving the camera and doing stuff at night and time lapses, and there's a million things that we want to be able to figure out.
So
next.
hair and makeup are last. Is that
hair? Yeah, no problem. I got that under control.
Got that nailed.
Yeah,
You walked in the door with that fixed.
Yeah. Well, that's the wife though. She was like, "No way, we're just shaving it." Yeah,
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love a good soundtrack. Like having a good theme song. Scott Manley, Scott Manley. Yeah, I like his music choice is really good, and it's memorable, and it's the thing. And there really is a lot of great Creative Commons music out there that you can find.
Yeah, it's just a matter of like, when do you bring the music in, and when do you play it in the background, and and how do you segue between, there's just like, if you go and look at a professional documentary, you can see the techniques that they're using, and then you just have to start building those in as your toolkit. So there was, partly as well, there's sort of like, there's some other great advice that I got, which was, there's this traditional narrative that makes a story compelling, right? There's an introduction, there's a kind of a conflict, and then there's a resolution. And if you look at the way I do my episodes, I'm trying to follow that narrative framework. So I'm sort of presenting the information, I'm getting to the problem, and then I'm trying to sort of help figure out how the problem was overcome or will be overcome in the future. And that's the kind of the beats that I follow as I do these things.
You're always keeping that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then the story, the narrative is important.
I mean, this is terrific insight because of all the different young people that are trying to figure out what they want to do and how they can make a connect. I'm 52. I was 42 when I decided I was going to be an astronaut teacher, and my background was computers. At the time, I was working as a marine science researcher, and at 42, it hit me that I was not going to get to be an astronaut. So I had to figure out what is the thing that's going to get me through the next half of my life, and that's how an astronaut teacher was. Just educator and astronaut put it together, and that first time that I walked into a room and said, "My name is Mike Mongo, and I'm an astronaut teacher," I was shaking in my boots. These people are going to eat me alive. What makes you an astronaut teacher? And then here we are 10 years later. And
you are an astronaut teacher.
And I'm Googleable. Cha, cha, cha. So yeah, that's the thing right there, is that you just started, you had an idea, you had a vision, you saw a way, and this is the information you wanted to get out to people. And it doesn't matter if a young person or any person wants to do communicate about video games or new audiobooks or whatever thing holds their interest. You just keep on pursuing it. I love the fact that if you just keep on pursuing it, you already have a critical competitive advantage over nearly everyone else.
Yeah, you can literally go back to the beginning of the Guide to Space and you can just watch us progress. Every piece of it, our camera work, our editing, our graphics, our music, our positioning, the lighting, everything, every single thing has been learned by one, fix at a time, and you can just watch it. It's kind of amazing. We're going to do I'm thinking of doing like a marathon where we'll watch a bunch of the old episodes and just feel, it'll be hilarious as we look back at what we were doing back in the beginning. So, just, as long as you stick with it,
Have you seen 7-year-old Nate, the show about science?
No.
You haven't or heard his podcast? Oh my Google.
No.
It's called The Show About Science. He interviews scientists. He's a 7-year-old podcaster. He's been doing it since he was 5. It's phenomenal. It gets picked as best of on all the lists right now. I saw him on I think he was on Ellen DeGeneres last month.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I've seen him, yeah. And how many 5 or 6 or 7-year-olds do you know that are just going to hit something? Just go, keep on doing it. As a matter of fact, we probably know a bunch that are really into. It could be Barbie, it could be Lego. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but
just communication skills are always important, right? Like it always make things better if you learn how to communicate. No matter what you do, there's value there in terms whether you work for a company, whether you have family, anything. There's value to that. I'm gonna totally listen to Nate's show about science. That's awesome. See if he wants to do a collaboration.
Oh wow, good one.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
So we have a question from one of our live viewers, John Suffield, who asks, has there been any astronomers who have recently broken an embargo and published details of their work ahead of time? Do you know anything about that, Fraser?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we are disconnected from the embargo process. We are utterly oblivious to the politics of embargoes. So I have no idea. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I mean, I think that it's journalists. It's usually journalists who will break the embargo. So the researcher will, or the like NASA, for example, will put out the embargo. You can talk to the researchers who did the work, and then in the end, you have to publish your material at the embargo date. And it would be a journalist who's trying to. It's such a big story that they're going to try and get the scoop and break embargo, and that happens, and then they get punished by NASA, and they don't get access to embargo material in the future.
Yeah,
that breaks up the whole open science issue, right? I mean, we have people like, say, Jason Wright, who publishes a lot of stuff on archive before it hits the journals.
Yep.
And it's just one example out of many. In fact, a lot of physics and astronomy now is out in the open, and I understand, although I don't follow it very closely. Biology is also doing the same thing, and medical science. They put the preprint out there months before it's going to hit the official journal. There's a lot of pressure towards open science. Do we take, when we get the preprint out there, there's no press release, obviously, because people, Jason Wright, he completely circumvents the whole Penn State PR machinery. He didn't even talk to them.
Yep.
What is that a new thing? Are we getting to where a lot of scientists are simply saying, this is crazy. I want to get my science out there. I want my peers to review it in the open. The whole old-fashioned jury, anonymous juror process is broken, and there's a lot of evidence that it is broken. Where are we going with that?
Well, so I mean, Astro PH, right, is a terrific resource, and I've been trolling that for 10 years. I mean, I've found all kinds of great stories in there. I'll quickly go through and just scan what's on Astro PH today and see if anything is interesting. The problem, as you said, it's a pre-press, so you have to be careful because people can put stuff up there before it's been peer reviewed, and if you don't know better, you can get sucked into somebody pseudoscience essentially. And so
there's a lot of crap too.
There's a lot of crap, and so you have to look at the names of the people that are involved. You have to look at what's being researched. You have to take it all into context. But I find, your example, I know exactly what you're talking about with Jason Wright. He did this great journal article or pre-press about where we should be looking for ancient civilizations in the solar system, and it got picked up. I mean, I thought that was my secret stomping ground, but it turns out that other people had noticed it as well and started to report on it. So
aliens.
Yeah, well, exactly, right. So the ability for the researchers to put their material directly onto Astro PH has always been there, and we as journalists who have the time and have always been looking through it, and it's but I look at the proliferation of the Lyman alpha forest in H2 regions of galactic interferometry. I'm just like, well, I don't know what that is, so I don't know if that's news. Could be news. I missed it. And so a lot of the times these big stories started out there, and then someone at the press agent, the press agent for them said, like, what have you discovered? What is this about? And the scientist is like, oh, we found the furthest galaxy. Oh, okay. That's the press release. So that material is all there. You just have to be capable of reading it and understanding it. And so I think that were I a researcher, I would make my papers do double duty, right? I would explain the significance of the findings in such a way that is interesting and useful to journalists at the same time that I'm creating a paper that will then be accepted for a journal. But, I mean, that's
probably 10% of the astronomers that have the ability to.
Well, sure, and for a lot of them, they don't care, right? We are not the audience. We, the public, and they're not. The audience is the people who are running the journals.
Well, is there a tension? Is there a tension between? I mean, there's what a professional scientist has to do to advance their career within their community, and then there's public outreach. And my understanding, I haven't been in that community, but my understanding is that the latter is often treated with a little bit of disdain, and they say, "Yeah, well, that's Neil deGrasse Tyson stuff," and they don't. We publish hard science paper. We don't deal with the public, and people like Tabby Boyajian who reach out to the public in addition to writing hard science papers, not instead of, but in addition to, and it's an incredible amount of hard work on her part, but she does it anyway. Where is the community going on that? Are they starting to accept public outreach?
Yeah, I think, when you think back to the Carl Sagan age, he was given a really hard time for being so accessible and available to the public. And fast forward now, and you've got people like Neil deGrasse Tyson who are rock stars who don't have time to do research anymore, right? Like Neil deGrasse Tyson, although is a PhD astrophysicist, isn't as involved in research as perhaps he was in the past, or could be if he didn't have television shows and public speaking appearances and all that kind of stuff. So there was definitely a tension between that. And for a lot of researchers, when they do a grant, they have a public outreach requirement for what they do. They've got to submit, for National Science Foundation and a lot of stuff for NASA, you've got to put in a budget of some amount that you're going to use to help publicize the work that you're doing and do outreach and education. So that requirement is already kind of baked into this. If I was a researcher, I would have to decide, is it more important for me to sit and write a lot of papers and do a lot of this research, or is it more important for me to get the word out and make sure that the public is aware of what I'm doing, and the funding agencies appreciate the level of publicity and sort of payback that they're getting for what they're doing? I think it's an individual case for every person. So for Bioadjuvant Star, there was a massive public interest in it and a lot of confusion about what had been discovered, and she stepped up and helped clear things up, but it took time away from her work in doing the science. So was that the best move? I don't know. I really think it's a case. I don't think that scientists should become science communicators. Like, I don't think they should. If they want to, that's awesome. If they think that is better for their career, then they should do that. But if what they really want to do is science and just focus on the science and do great science and discover big things, then they should do that too. So I don't think that there's a one answer for every situation in this case. Mm-hmm. And I push back against people who kind of think that there should be, that all scientists must buckle down and get out on Twitter and start having conversations with people. I don't think that's necessary. It's necessary for some people and not necessary for others.
And my friend Buck Field, who I work with at Icarus Interstellar, he has a thing we call the field rule, and that is, if you think that everybody should work together, then work together. And if you think that everybody should work apart from one another and explore the whole thing and work competitively, then work competitively. Do it to the best of your ability. Choose whichever way you want to go, but do it to the best of your ability. And we call that the field.
just don't complain, right? So if you know that you're going to get this done by working on the science, just putting your head down and doing the research, then you're going to get more papers out than anyone who's spending time being on people's podcasts and writing guest posts on Medium. You do you. And I think at the same time, if you enjoy communicating with the public, then spend time doing that as well. I just don't feel like people should be pressured either way. It would be nice if there was more resources available for the researchers who do want to put their head down, that if the universities and the funding institutions and stuff could provide them more resources to help get the word out for what they do. Almost like agents, I could see agents for scientists happening in the future, but
oh my God, the short term, you're making people money right now. You're inventing careers.
There you go. Yeah, if you love science and you love talking to people, find a scientist and become an agent. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see patrons for scientists, Patreon campaigns for scientists. Right? Imagine Tabby. Like, I'll bet you Tabby could do this now, right? Where she goes and says, "Hey, I'm starting a Patreon campaign." I mean, I know she did some crowdfunded stuff, but she said, "I'm going to put together a campaign. You're going to pay my salary, and all I'm going to do is work on this interesting kinds of science." And then she doesn't have to get research anymore, doesn't have to apply for grants, and is not beholden to any government agency or funding agency. She just gets a salary to just study the space from the public. I think that is going to happen anytime now.
Yeah, she's going to hear this episode and she's going to do that.
Great. If she wants any advice and wants to collaborate.
She's done it more than anybody else, right? She got $100,000 to monitor the star that's named after her.
But I think she, from the strength of her ability, should be getting a salary by her fans, who are people who are excited about the discoveries that are being made by her and her team.
I agree with that, but that's not what's happening, right? I mean, she works.
No, but I'm saying
she's on the tenure track at LSU, but that's and I think there's room for doing that both ways, right? I mean, you could be on the tenure track somewhere and getting enough to support your family, and also be getting extra money to support your research from the public. And that's exactly what she has done. The telescope network that's monitoring her star is paid for by crowdfunding. And when they discover a dip, which they have actually just recently, we're in a dip right now. I say we, that tells you how involved I am in this sort of thing. But we're in a dip right now. She's able to, through her network of friends and colleagues, to bring in a lot of other resources to monitor the star and take spectra and so forth. There's even people at Green Bank looking at the star for SETI signals. So, that's happening, but it's not to the point where you could say, okay, I have these small children and I have to make my mortgage payments, and I need the.
Well,
please.
If anybody could do it, I'll bet you she could.
Maybe so.
And another thing, it's a great idea, the whole agent thing. So then she wouldn't have to worry about it, have someone else facilitate that role. They would get a catalog or a slew of particular scientists, or you can have even agents that handle particular directions of science agents, and then work on the outreach for the individual projects in science to ensure that they have a regular income.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see a scientist set up a Patreon campaign.
You had a guy from Lab Thunder on the Weekend Space Hangout recently.
Yeah,
We
were talking about that on the show, and that was sort of where the idea came from, and it'd be interesting to see them develop that.
Zach Weidersmith, the cartoonist, gets a lot of his income from Patreon. He gets many thousands of dollars a month from Patreon, and he's able actually to hire somebody to help him. He actually supports his wife's career by moving around the country as she gets different postdoc positions and whatever. And but he's a cartoonist, so he can do that. And they have 2 small children, and so it's almost like she's a scientist, he's a cartoonist. That's kind of the ideal situation.
Oh my God, it's a sitcom show. It writes itself.
He writes the jokes, but.
By the way, I'd like to take this opportunity to point out I'm a Patreon supporter of Paul Carr as well.
Yes, I acknowledge that. Thank you.
But it works. This is the way to make things work. It's a terrific. The point that Fraser made earlier is like, okay, so if you're not spending money over here, figure out what you do want to support, find the people that are doing it, and put that money in that direction. It doesn't have to be more than a couple dollars a month, and because everybody puts a little bit in, and it turns into something wonderful.
Yeah,
that's the dream.
Amen.
Yeah, I'm on the pulpit now.
Represent.
We are running out of time, unfortunately.
Adam, I think there's maybe 2 more questions.
Go on then, Paul, if you know what they are.
Well, I posted one to the your friend John. Is that why ESA withholds data from the public? And there's another one. Patrick has something.
He just wants to know why Brian Cox hasn't gotten any love here in North America.
I think it's his Manchester accent.
I think lots of people love Cox.
Yeah, he's much beloved.
That's a Key West joke, right?
Yes. Well, Brian is famous for his good looks, so I don't need to say. Do I need to say more?
Yeah, his dreamy Manchester accent.
I want to. If he has an album, I'll buy it.
He does have actually albums.
Rock albums?
Well, he was even a pop star before he was a scientist.
Of course he was. I didn't know that. Oh my Google.
Well, pop star is maybe stretching it, but it was just in a band.
Well, he was in a
Played
band.
keyboards. Yeah. That was about it.
Yeah.
He played keyboards and he
Okay.
smiled a lot.
He's a musician. All right, but
Still smiles a lot.
it was the '80s. Everything is equal then. It's all haze.
And personally, I have a double feeling about this science communicator / rock star trend. I don't know. I am not too comfortable with it. I'd rather.
Why? That's all I want in this world.
I don't know. I would just like to have a science communicator who is good at it and who doesn't need this charismatic. It's nice to have a charisma, but sometimes it becomes bigger than the actual communication part. So I like when it's more professional rather than towards the spectacle side of.
You're a traditionalist.
Yeah,
I'm not traditional.
I think she's.
Yeah,
I think she's right.
Exactly the opposite.
Emily Lakdawala, I think, has kind of got the right balance. You know,
Yes.
She communicates science extremely well, and she's not not trying to be a star. She's just trying to communicate science, and
exactly.
She's or another person that I think is really, really good at that would be Jason Wright.
Or maybe Brian Greene as well.
Brian Greene. Brian's done some TV stuff, but yeah, Brian Greene's very good. But I think Jason, for example, has a blog where he puts his professional work into perspective for a more general audience, and I think that's about right.
Do you have any favorites, Fraser?
Oh, yeah. Who am I a big fan of right now? Well, I mentioned right now I'm sort of in the YouTube space, so I think I'm really interested in what Vsauce, Veritasium, and then there's some more audio ones. There's a great Second Thought, Curious Droid. So there are a bunch of YouTubers that I'm a huge fan of. My friend Isaac Arthur, who does this sort of futurism YouTube channel, is just really great and really smart, and I'm really enjoying his work. So there are. I mean, the great thing about this is I see them all as friends now, which is wonderful. Phil Plait, Dr. Pamela Gay, of course. Man, there's so many, and I'm really lucky that I get a chance to work with all these people.
Yeah.
I'm also a huge fan of Dr. Pamela Gay.
Me too.
Okay, so we're going to leave it here. Thank you all for taking part. Daniela, thank you for staying up late.
Thank you.
Matthias also, I know it's very late in Europe. Paul, Mike, thank you for making it here.
Emily Grassley. I forgot Emily Grassley.
Yeah.
Who? I don't know that person. Who is Emily Grassley?
She does science YouTube channel.
I will find out.
She's worked in a museum, natural history museum, and so we'll do autopsies of animals and stuff on her channel. It's really interesting.
Oh, cool. Nick Nielsen is saying in the chat that he enjoyed your collaboration with Isaac Arthur.
Me too. Yeah. I like I said, Isaac. If you haven't found Isaac Arthur's channel, it's by far one of the most interesting. It is like that kind of 1975 futurism, thinking about really cool kind of concepts, like reading your Omni magazine. That's the mind space that I go into when I watch his stuff. I really kind of enjoy it. It's just so kind of optimistic and
my memories of those days are pretty hazy, but yeah, okay.
Thank you, Fraser, for your time.
Oh, glad to be here.
Spending it with us. I hope you have a good summer. You're off to see the eclipse.
I will, yeah. It's gonna be my first. So I've knocked the rocket launch off my bucket list, and now I'm gonna knock seeing a total solar eclipse off my bucket list.
I'd seen 2, so I'm not that bothered about this one.
Oh, you had the one that went through UK just a couple of years ago.
It was 99. It was a few years ago. Time flies. All right, thank you everyone for taking part. Thank you all for listening.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, good seeing
And
you.
we will be back to entertain you with another audio podcast sometime soon. Okay? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Go to
Thank you, guys.
unseenpodcast.com to find out more.
/ Patreon. No, that's the way
No,
around.
no, that's-
Patreon / Unseen Podcast.
Yeah, something like that. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.